having trouble knowing when to get out of a losing trade or when to take profit, have situations where one large loss wipes out all your gains, and more. Right, today, I'll share with you all a very simple but effective stop loss and take profit strategy that anyone can use. If you find this content helpful, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Knowing when to get out of a trade, whether on a winning trade or a losing trade, is the hardest part of trading. It's what differentiates a successful trader from one who isn't. But before we discuss the specific strategy, let's first put it into context with the two biggest sins in trading. The first one is sitting in a losing position for way too long. The second one is letting a winning trade become a losing trade. First, sitting in a losing position for way too long. This is where you buy an option, let's say for $100, it goes down to 75 and then to 50, and you don't really know when to exit. You don't want to take the loss, right? And then all of a sudden it goes to like zero. Your options expire worthless. You're unable to take the loss. Now we have to think about why does this happen, right? We know from research the psychological pain of making an unrealized loss realized is often so frustrating and or painful that we as humans tend to push it off. Like, how many times have you, myself included, told yourself, let's give it a couple more minutes, a couple more days. It might actually turn out in my favor. Right? These are the type of behavior that causes you to win, let's say $100 a day for a couple days, and then you have $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 loss where it wipes you out. And this is why this strategy will help you learn how to take losses until it becomes second nature, so that in the future, you don't necessarily have to use this strategy. You can start setting those mental stop losses and actually abide by them. The second sin, letting a winning trade become a losing trade. This one is actually very similar to the first one if you think about it. Let's say, again, you're up $100 on a trade. You see that profit go down a bit to, let's say, 80. And you're like, well, it was at 100. I don't want to sell until it gets back to 100. I'll just wait until it gets back to 100 and then I'll sell. And then lo and behold, it goes to 60, 40, and then break even, and then all of a sudden you're down $100 on the trade. Again, it's very similar to the first one because you don't want to quote unquote lose out when it was at $100. Again, the pain of losing the money is causing you to lose out on even more money. This is what take profits and stop losses are going to do for you. And this is why this strategy is going to help you learn and become a habit on taking profits and stop losses and getting rid of that emotional baggage. Now, here's the strategy, and I'll explain to you why this works. I'm mainly an option seller, so let's just start with that first, but the same idea can be applied to option buying. I'm going to use an example to demonstrate the principle, and I'm just going to summarize the strategy shortly after this. We're selling options here, so you can apply this to buying options, the same idea. Let's assume that initially you collected $100 on your credit spread, right? You set your stop loss to be 50% or 100% of your total credit collected, right? You don't ever want to lose more than your potential of winning, right? In the best case scenario, you make this $100 when the options expire. You don't ever want to risk more than 100. So I would never recommend you set your stop loss greater than 100% of your total credit collected. So in this case, I usually do 50 to 100%. I would say your stop loss would be 150 to 200, right? If it hits $200, if it hits $150, you're automatically out of the trade. It doesn't matter. You take the loss and move on to the next trade. So in this case, your P&L will be negative 50 to $100. You would have lost $50 up to $100. And that's the worst case scenario because the trade went against you. You entered a good trade, right? And the trade actually went in your favor. Now your current price point is $50. Remember, thinking about sin number 2, you don't want to let a winning trade become a losing trade. Now in this case, it is now a winning trade and you don't want to ever lose money on this. But you still think that you can probably make more money, right? You think you can probably realize all $100. You want all $100. So you would set your stop loss at $100. Which means that if the market does tend to go in the opposite direction of what you're looking for, especially in a very fast manner, you'll get stopped out and your P&L would be zero. You will not lose a single dime on this trade, right? You cannot lose money, and never let a winning trade become a losing trade. This is very important. This is probably what I've seen to be the hardest one for people to abide by because you've made money. You want to make more money, so you tend to remove the stop loss. Don't do it. Just keep it at negative 100. Make sure you never lose money on this trade. You can always buy back in later. Now, let's assume the trade again continues to go in your favor, right? And now you're at $25. Continuously move that stop loss down to $50. Again, protect yourself. You can also take profit here at $25, but that's the same. Let's just take that out of the equation. It makes things too complicated, especially for beginners. Just move your stop loss up to $50. And now, if anything were to happen out of the ordinary, you at least would have made $50. 50% ROI is pretty good. Now, again, you'll see As the trade continues to go in your favor, move it down. Now you're at 12.5%. Move it up, move your stop loss down to $25, right? So now you make $75. Same thing goes with $5, move it up to $10, and now your total profit is again $90. I tend to never go more than $10 or 10%, but you can, depending on the profit, right? Depending on how much you want to do and how much you want to manage it, and all until it goes down to zero. The moment it hits zero, your total P&L is $100, right? You made max profit. The strategy is not very complicated. By doing this, you're basically minimizing your losses here, and you're able to protect yourself all throughout this time here, right? No matter what happens, you'll never lose money. Trading, again, this is a mindset change that's not about making as much money as possible. It's about not losing massive amounts of money in one loss. So to summarize it, the strategy is very easy. When you enter trades, set your stop loss of 50% to 100% of credit, right? Never lose more than you can make. When it becomes 50% unrealized profit, move it to break even. 25% unrealized profit, 50, right? And such and so, right? Move it all the way down until it becomes expired, out of the money. Step ladder function, very simple to do. Automate it, and this takes all the thinking and emotion out of it, and just keep doing this over and over and over again until you get used to losing money, because this will happen. This will definitely happen, and you got to get used to losing money because you won't win every trade that you're in. Get used to this. And you'll also be able to get used to avoiding sin number 2, which is getting out of trades even though you're up on it, right? You want to make sure that you're able to realize that profit even though it's not the maximum amount of gains that you have seen, right? That's also two very important skills to have, and this strategy helps you achieve that. So let's just do the math here. Let's say that every time you lose $100. Every time you win, let's do something like $75, 75%, right? Because you aren't taking the max amount of profit. Let's assume here that you traded 10 times and you win around 70% of the time. Okay, which means that you win 7 and you lose 3. After 3 trades, you would have lost $300, but you would have made $75 every time you win for 7 trades, which means that your ending P&L would be $225. So after 10 trades, using $100, you would have made $225. Really not bad, right? So let's assume that you are a little bit more aggressive in taking your stop losses, so -50. And let's just say you keep the same profit when you do win. But because you're more aggressive in taking those stop losses, your win rate drops a little bit. Let's just go to 60%. So in this case, you win 6 and you lose 4. So the final P&L means when you lose those 6, you'll lose a total of $200, right? But when you win, you make the same amount of money, $75 times 6, which means you actually make $250 after 10 trades, which is actually, if you look at it, better than the $225 that you made above. This is why it's so important in controlling this number right here. Win rate matters a lot as well. If you want to learn how to improve your win rate by entering trades the right way, make sure you click on the video linked in the upper right hand corner. But you have to make sure that you don't lose large amounts of money on a single trade. Let's do another example where you don't abide by the strategy and you YOLO, therefore doing both of the sins that we talked about. Let's say that you YOLO, you don't follow the principle, you lose $400 every trade. But you're so good, you take max profit every single time you win against the same 10 trades, and you're such a good trader, you have an 80% win rate. So therefore you win 8 and you lose 2. In those 2 losses, $400 each, you would have lost $800. In those 8 wins, you would have made $100 every win times 8 times, which is actually $800. So you actually come out to be break even. So as you can see from just this example, even though you make more money, you win more often, but you lose way more money when you do lose, you actually come off to be worse off than our first situation where you win 7 times, minimize your losses, and make less money. So this is why it's really important to understand why this strategy exists. It is to avoid sin number 1 and sin number 2, and affecting your win-loss as well as your overall loss number when you do lose. I'm going to head over to charts and explain briefly why a percent-based stop loss strategy theoretically works. A good example could be right here. Let's assume that I decided to take a bullseye trade here on 818. Everything looks good every day up until 824. On 824, you probably already made a good amount of profit on it. Let's assume that you made 50% profit. However, there's a large red day that could have changed the overall momentum of the market. So instead of holding the bag and wondering, well, will the market actually continue its uptrend or will it continue downward? You just get out the trade first at no loss, right? Because you don't want to be thinking, oh, well, it could go back up, it could go back down. No, just get rid of all that thoughts. Just take the break even or take the L, right, and get out and reevaluate later. So in this case, right, the market went back up. But what happens if it was here, right? Instead of you bought in here and the market continued to go down, right? Instead of thinking about it, you just take 100% loss. You bought an option that was $300 and it got to 150 on this candlestick right here. Just get out of it and you can always rebuy back in at a later time. So let's just take this example here, right? Let's assume that I entered this trade here on this day because it hit this previous support and it's a green day. Seems valid. The next day it went down. Right, you're like, oh shit, what's going to happen? Should I exit or should I not exit? Is this a false breakout? Is this a bear trap? Is this a bull trap? You don't know, right? So you're thinking about all this stuff. But because your stop loss is at a negative 150 and negative 50 and negative 100, you haven't hit your stop loss yet. Now next day, oh, went down a little bit lower. Next day, oh, it's even. So I haven't hit my stop loss yet. And then boom, it went up, right? If you didn't have a stop loss, you could have very well exited here. You could have exited here and you exit it and it went back up, right? And you're like, oh shit, I lost out on that trade, on the potential earnings. So that negative 50 to negative 100 allows you enough wiggle room to let the market play out. This is just a couple examples, right, that shows you why this strategy works. If you guys found this content helpful, please like this video and subscribe to the channel so that you guys don't miss another video like this. And if you guys want to see how effective this strategy can be when combined with great entries, click on this video in the end screen to see how I put the strategy in action and turn $500 into almost $3,000 by trading only SPY credit spreads.